I'm deeply honored to have as my guest today Dar Jamal. Dar, welcome to the Lifeboat Hour.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good to be with you.
So, Dar, on April 27th of this year, Truth Out carried a fabulous article by you entitled Cataclysmic Changes as Planetary Temperatures Rise, in which you wrote extensively not only about the record that was set in March, but also about the many planetary distress signals that are coming in increasing volume. And you call all of this anthropogenic climate disruption. I'm wondering if you'd spend some time summarizing those distress signals, because I want to lay out a context specifically for our discussion. And also, would you explain the term ACD?
Sure, I'll start with that. I chose to use that term, anthropogenic climate disruption, because one of the arguments of the climate deniers is that, well, the climate's always changing, and
right.
Technically you'd have to agree that that is actually a factually accurate statement. The climate is changing every second of every day, always has been, always will be, no matter what happens. So if we talk about, instead of using the term change, climate disruption, because what humans have done by injecting so much CO2 into the atmosphere and literally changing the chemistry of the atmosphere and hence causing these massive disruptions on the planet is precisely climate disruption. And then, of course, simply using the term anthropogenic, using one word instead of two, which means the same thing as human-caused. And so that's why I try to use that term just to be very, very accurate, as I do in all my climate dispatches, including all the links to all the scientific reports, because as you and I are going to get into soon, the information is so intense and our situation is so dire that I've taken it upon myself to be increasingly specific, more of a layperson's term is just being really, really anal about how intensely I document things and make extremely specific citations and only use the most credible and highest level scientific reports available. So that's the explanation of anthropogenic climate disruption as a term. And then, the planetary distress signals that we're seeing there's several. And really, I think the first and most important one is the increasing acidification of the oceans. We're seeing more and more reports on this now, and the reality is that once we change the chemistry of the oceans to a point where they can't support the building of coral reefs, where approximately 90% of all life in oceans spends some time of its life in a coral reef. Once those stop being able to be formed, then it doesn't take a genius to see how that's going to dramatically impact life in the oceans. And so that's one, I think, probably the most important aspect. We're already seeing the fact that because of overfishing and pollution, mass die-offs in the ocean are already well underway. Over 90% of all the pelagic fish in the planet are already gone, just for starters. And we're seeing growing dead zones, an increasing of them both in number and in size all around the planet, not just, in the Gulf of Mexico that we hear about in this country, but all around the entire planet. Other signs, I think the second probably most important distress signal is what's happening to the poles, specifically the Arctic, where we're seeing just actually a report came out last week that showed that in the satellite era, we just saw the winter of the lowest recorded ice volume in the Arctic on record. So the Navy a ways back released a report that they predicted a ice-free Arctic by 2016, and it looks like we may well be on track to start seeing periods in the summer of an ice-free Arctic. So once that goes, then, of course, that's a major positive feedback loop, because then we're going to see increasing amounts of heat trapped in the dark water there, as well as then, of course, this ramping up the heating around the rest of the globe. So so as not to go on too much longer about this, that's really, I think, two of the most important things, and maybe we can get into some of the others a little bit later, but those are, I think, the two most obvious, blatant, and I think the most critical distress signals that we're seeing